The fire crackles in the stone hearth, casting shadows that dance across the rough-hewn walls of the mountain cabin. Outside, the first snow of autumn 1899 falls silent and steady, blanketing Elk Mountain in white. Inside, Matthias Cordell Flint sits in his oak chair, the one he built with his own hands 20 years ago, and watches his grandchildren wait for the story they've been asking about all their lives. Thomas, 18 now and bound for law school come spring, leans forward with his father's intensity. Lily, 15 and already teaching the younger children at the mountain school, has her mother's patient eyes. They've heard pieces of the story before, fragments whispered at family gatherings, but never the whole truth. Never from beginning to end. Matthias is 68 years old. His beard has gone completely white, and arthritis makes his hands shake on cold mornings like this one. But his eyes remain sharp, blue as winter ice, and when he speaks, his voice carries the weight of a man who has lived through hell and built something good on the other side. "You asked how I met your mother," he begins, his words measured and careful. "You want to know why we live up here on this mountain instead of down in the valley like normal folk. You think it's a love story, and maybe it is, but not the kind you're expecting." Thomas shifts in his seat. Lily pulls her shawl tighter. "This is a story about duty," Matthias continues, "about what a man does when civilization fails, when the law turns blind and the righteous stay silent. It's about the choice every man faces eventually, to walk away from evil or to stand against it, knowing the cost will be everything you have." He pauses, staring into the fire, as if he can see the past flickering in the flames. "Your mother was 28 years old when I found her. I was 47. She was a nun, devoted to God and teaching children who had no other hope of learning to read. I was a hermit who'd given up on humanity 8 years before. We had no business meeting, and less business caring about each other. But sometimes God has plans that make no earthly sense." Thomas opens his mouth to ask a question, but Matthias raises one weathered hand. "Let me tell it proper. From the beginning. From the day I stopped being just a man on a mountain and became something else. Something your mother needed. Something this family needed, though none of us knew it yet." The old man closes his eyes, and when he speaks again, his voice changes. Younger, harder. The voice of a man who still had fire in his belly and ghosts on his conscience. "It was summer, 1878, 21 years ago, and I was already dead. I just didn't know it yet." The children lean closer, the wind howls outside, rattling the shutters, and Matthias begins the tale that will change how they see their father, their mother, and the mountain they call home. The morning sun breaks over the eastern ridge at precisely 5:43, same as it has every summer morning for the 8 years Matthias Flint has lived on Elk Mountain. He knows the exact time because a mountain man learns to read the sun like other men read pocket watches. Time matters up here. 15 minutes can mean the difference between making it back to the cabin before the afternoon thunderstorm hits or spending a wet, miserable night huddled under a pine tree waiting for lightning to find you. He's already been up for an hour checking the trap lines that run along the northern creek bed. 3 beaver, 2 marten, and 1 unfortunate muskrat that somehow got itself tangled in a number 3 conibear trap meant for something twice its size. The trap is a cruel piece of engineering, all spring-loaded steel designed to snap shut with enough force to break a beaver's neck instantly. Matthias prefers the conibear to the old leg-hold traps because death comes quick, and the animal doesn't suffer. A man who causes unnecessary pain to God's creatures is no better than the predators he hunts. He skins them all with quick, practiced movements, his Arkansas toothpick knife making precise cuts that waste nothing. The blade is carbon steel, holds an edge better than any factory-made knife, sharpened every morning at a precise 20-degree angle. Every pelt will bring $2 at the trading post, and every $2 means another month he doesn't have to go down to that cesspool of humanity and pretend to be civilized. The work is methodical, almost meditative. Slice, peel, scrape, stretch. Every movement practiced 10,000 times until it's muscle memory. Today, his mind is on numbers, winter calculations. By his estimate, he needs 200 pounds of dried meat, 50 pounds of flour, 20 pounds of salt, and enough ammunition to see him through until spring. The ammunition is the tricky part. Shells for the spring field cost 12 cents each, And he goes through maybe 200 rounds a winter between hunting and keeping his skills sharp. That's $24 right there, nearly half his yearly income. But a man who can't shoot straight in the mountains is a dead man, so the cost is necessary. The cabin sits at 9,000 feet, tucked into a natural clearing surrounded by tall pines and aspens that shimmer silver in the wind. He built it himself over the course of one brutal winter, after the fever took Clara and Thomas and left him with nothing but rage and the need to be anywhere that didn't smell like death and failure. The construction was his salvation in those dark months. Every log he cut and dragged and notched into place was a denial of the emptiness inside him. Every stone he fitted into the fireplace was a refusal to simply lie down and die. The work kept him alive when living seemed pointless, and the cabin that resulted is solid as the mountain itself. The logs are 16 inches thick, chinked with moss and mud mixed with horsehair. The roof is split shale angled steep, shedding snow and rain like water off a duck's back. One window faces east for morning light, another south for warmth. No windows north or west where the weather comes from. Inside, everything has its place. Military precision carried over from his 12 years as an Army scout, when disorder could get you killed and attention to detail kept you breathing. The rifles hang on pegs near the door, Springfield Model 1873 for long-range work, accurate to 600 yards in the right hands. Winchester 66 for close encounters, lever action that can put 15 rounds downrange in less than a minute. Colt 45 pistol in a holster hanging from a nail, cleaned and oiled every Sunday whether he's fired it or not. Traps hang organized by size on the east wall. Number 1 for muskrat and mink. Number 2 for fox and coyote. Number 3 for beaver and bobcat. Number 4 for wolf and mountain lion, though he rarely uses those. The big traps can break a man's leg if they catch you wrong, and Matthias has seen what happens to a man who gets trapped alone on a mountain with a shattered femur. Better to leave the big predators alone unless they're causing problems. Pelts stretch on wooden frames leaning against the walls, filling the cabin with the musty smell of wild animals and curing leather. Some men complain about the smell, but to Matthias, it's the scent of honest work and self-sufficiency. Every pelt represents food in his belly and supplies for winter. Every pelt is proof that he can survive without depending on anyone. Jeremiah, his mule, stands in the hand-built corral and watches Matthias work with the patient disapproval only a mule can manage. The animal is 15 years old, stubborn as original sin, and the closest thing to family Matthias has allowed himself since Clara died. The mule cost him $40 8 years ago, a fortune, but worth every penny. Jeremiah can carry 200 pounds of supplies up a mountain trail that would kill a horse, can survive on sparse grazing that wouldn't sustain a goat, and has enough sense to avoid rattlesnakes and cliff edges without being told. "Don't look at me like that," Matthias mutters, stripping the hide from a beaver with smooth, efficient strokes. "I feed you, don't I? Shelter you from wolves and weather. Built you a corral with my own hands. More than most get in this world." Jeremiah snorts and turns away, apparently unconvinced by this argument. The mule has opinions about Matthias's lifestyle choices and isn't shy about expressing them through body language and strategic defecation. The work is good, simple, honest. You set a trap, you check it, you harvest what the mountain provides. No politics, no lead, no promises broken by men who smile while they stab you in the back. Up here, the rules are clean. Work hard or starve, respect the mountain or die. Waste nothing and the land will sustain you. It's not the life Matthias imagined when he was young and full of dreams about building a ranch down in the valley, raising a family, teaching his son to track and hunt and be a good man. But dreams die, people die, and sometimes a man has to build a new life from the ashes of the old one, even if that life is solitary and hard and empty of everything except survival. He's finishing the last pelt, scraping fat from the inside of the marten hide, when something catches his attention, a sound that doesn't belong, or rather, the absence of sound. The birds have gone quiet along the eastern ridge, and that never happens this time of morning unless something's disturbed them. Matthias sets down his knife and walks to the edge of the clearing, every sense suddenly alert. 8 years alone on a mountain teach you to read the subtle language of the wilderness, the way the wind carries scent, the pattern of shadows through the trees, the nervous way a mule shifts its weight when predators are near. The quality of silence when something dangerous is moving through territory where it doesn't belong. Could be a mountain lion. They're rare this high up in summer, preferring the lower elevations where deer are more plentiful. But Matthias has seen cats sign in this area before. A big tom, maybe 200 pounds, that treats this section of mountain as the edge of its territory. But it's late in the season for lions to be this active. And besides, the bird's silence has the wrong quality. Birds shut up for cats, but it's a gradual thing, a wave of quiet that spreads as the predator moves. This silence is sudden and total, like someone threw a blanket over the whole mountainside. Could be a bear. Grizzlies still roam these peaks, though they're getting scarcer every year as miners and loggers push further into their range. Matthias has a healthy respect for grizzlies, having nearly lost his life to one 6 years ago. The scar that runs from his left temple down to his jaw is a permanent reminder that even a man with a rifle and experience can lose a fight with 800 pounds of angry bear. But again, the silence is wrong. Bears are noisy creatures, crashing through underbrush, knocking over rocks, generally announcing their presence like a drunk at a church social. This silence speaks of men. He scans the ridgeline 2 miles to the northeast and sees them. Crows circling in an unusual pattern, not the lazy spirals of birds looking for carrion, but the agitated loops of creatures disturbed by something on the ground. And there, barely visible through the morning haze, a thin column of smoke rising from Devil's Canyon. Matthias frowns. Nobody goes to Devil's Canyon. The trail is too steep, the rocks too unstable, and the locals say it's cursed, though Matthias puts no stock in superstition. The canyon earned its name honestly enough. 3 miners died there in the spring of '71 when an overhang collapsed during a storm, and a hunting party lost 2 men to a flash flood in '74. Bad luck and worse judgment, not curses. But the name stuck, and now the God-fearing folk of Redemption Falls give the place a wide berth. But someone is there now, someone who either doesn't know the area's reputation or doesn't care. And something about it feels wrong in Matthias's gut. A cold unease that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with the instincts that kept him alive during his army years. He walks back to the cabin and checks his rifles, a ritual he performs every time he senses potential danger. Springfield loaded, Winchester ready, Colt chambered, knife sharp. Everything a man needs to deal with trouble. Then he stops himself, his hand on the Winchester stock, his feet already turned toward the trail. What is he doing? This isn't his problem. Someone camping in Devil's Canyon is none of his concern. He came up here to get away from other people's troubles, to live and die without the complications that come from caring about anyone but himself. He sets the rifle back in its rack and returns to his pelts. But the unease doesn't leave. It sits in his chest like a stone, heavy and cold, and no amount of work can shift it. He finds himself stopping every few minutes to look northeast, toward that column of smoke and those agitated crows. The sun climbs higher, and still he can't focus. His hands go through the motions of scraping and stretching, but his mind is 2 miles away, trying to puzzle out what could make crows circle like that and why smoke would be rising from a canyon where nobody goes. By noon, he's accomplished nothing except wearing a path in the dirt from pacing. Jeremiah watches him with what can only be described as mule-sized concern, which is to say a slight elevation of both ears and a cessation of strategic defecation. "It's not your business," Matthias says out loud, and Jeremiah flicks one long ear in response. But the truth is simpler and harder than that. It's not his business, but it might be his duty. And a man who ignores his duty because it's inconvenient is the same as a man who has no honor at all. That's what Clara would have said, in her gentle way that made even criticism sound like love. That's what he taught Thomas. In the 6 short years, he had to teach his son anything, before fever stole the boy away and left Matthias with nothing but regret and empty rooms. He thinks about those years sometimes, usually late at night when sleep won't come and the ghosts are loudest. Thomas at 2 years old, taking his first steps across the cabin floor, while Clara laughed and clapped. Thomas at 4, helping Matthias feed the chickens they kept back then, before the mountain. Thomas at 6, learning to track deer in the snow, his small hand in Matthias's larger one, asking endless questions about how you tell a duo's print from a buck's, why snow makes sound when it's cold, whether bears really sleep all winter. And then Thomas at 6.5, lying in bed burning with fever, his skin so hot it felt like touching a stove. Clara beside him, equally fevered. Both of them dying while Matthias was 3 weeks away tracking hostile Cheyenne for the army. By the time he got home, they'd been in the ground for 2 days. The neighbors had done what they could, but typhoid is a fast killer and there was no time to send word. He failed them. That's the truth he lives with every day. Failed to be there when they needed him most. Failed to protect the two people who mattered more than his own life. And for 8 years, he's been running from that failure. Hiding on this mountain where the only person he can disappoint is himself. But maybe that ends today. Maybe this unease in his gut is Clara's ghost telling him he has a chance to be the man he should have been 8 years ago. Maybe this is redemption offered in the form of smoke and circling crows and a mystery in a cursed canyon. By 2 o'clock, Matthias has made his decision. He'll scout the area, nothing more. Make sure whoever's down there isn't in trouble. If it's just some fool tenderfoot who got lost on a day hike, he'll point them back to town and be done with it. If it's something worse, well, he'll deal with that when he sees it. He straps the Winchester to his back, holsters his pistol, slides the Arkansas toothpick into its sheath on his belt. 3 weapons for 3 ranges, rifle for distance, pistol for close work, knife for when things go truly bad. He fills a canteen with fresh water from the creek, grabs a handful of jerky in case this takes longer than expected, and starts down the mountain. Jeremiah watches him go with what might be approval or might just be relief at not having to witness any more pacing. Keep the place standing till I get back, Matthias tells the mule, who responds by immediately defecating in the exact center of the corral. Some things never change. The trail to Devil's Canyon is barely a trail at all, more like a suggestion worn into the mountainside by deer and elk over the centuries. It winds down through stands of pine and aspen, across seasonal creeks reduced to trickles by the summer heat, over rocky outcrops where one misstep could mean a 100-foot fall onto granite below. Matthias moves through it with the silent efficiency of a man who has spent years learning to walk without sound, placing each foot carefully on solid rock, avoiding the loose scree that would announce his presence to anyone below. The skill came hard during his army years. He was a cavalry scout, which meant his job was to move ahead of the main force, locate hostile positions, and report back without being seen or heard. Do it right and you lived. Do it wrong and you got an arrow through the throat or a bullet in the back. Matthias did it right for 12 years, from the end of the Civil War to the closing of the frontier, and he's still alive, which is more than most scouts can say. The day is hot for early summer in the high country, maybe 73 degrees, with a sky so blue it almost hurts to look at. At this elevation, the air is thin enough that sunburn comes quick if you're not careful, and dehydration can sneak up on a man who isn't paying attention. Matthias has seen greenhorns die from both, their bodies found days later swollen and blackened under the merciless sun. Columbine grows in patches along the trail, Colorado's state flower with its delicate white and purple petals. The 5 spurs of each flower point in different directions like tiny hands reaching for sunlight. Beautiful but tough, surviving winters that would kill anything less resilient. The plant blooms in thin, rocky soil where nothing else will grow and keeps blooming year after year, despite the cold and the wind and the brief growing season. Matthias has always respected that about the Columbine. It doesn't complain about the cold or the thin soil or the brief summer. It just blooms where it's planted and makes the best of what it's given. There's a lesson in that, though he's not sure what it is. Maybe just that survival is its own kind of beauty. Maybe that being tough doesn't mean you can't be delicate. Maybe nothing at all, and he's just getting philosophical in his old age. He's a mile from the canyon when he finds the first sign that something's wrong. Boot prints in the soft earth near a seasonal creek, fresh within the last few hours. The prints are clear and distinct, pressed deep into the mud at the water's edge where someone knelt to drink or wash. Expensive boots, the kind made in Denver or maybe even Chicago. City boots with leather soles and decorative stitching that have no business on this terrain. A man wearing boots like that is either very rich or very stupid, and probably both. Rich because those boots cost $10 if they cost a penny, more money than a working man sees in 2 months. Stupid because leather soles slip on wet rock, offer no traction on loose scree, and wear out twice as fast as the hobnailed boots every local wears in the mountains. Matthias kneels and examines the prints more closely. Size 10, maybe 10 and a half. Heavy tread, which means the man weighs at least 180, probably more. The depth of the impression in the soft mud tells him the man was moving slowly here, not running or hurrying, taking his time, confident, unworried about being followed or discovered. 50 yards further, he finds a crushed patch of wild grass where someone sat or knelt for several minutes. The grass is bent but not broken, which means whoever it was didn't stay long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And there, caught on a branch 3 feet off the ground, a scrap of black fabric. Matthias approaches it carefully, as if it might bite. He touches it with 2 fingers, holds it up to the light. Wool, good quality, tightly woven with professional care. The weave is consistent and even, the kind of work that comes from a real tailor, not the rough homespun most frontier folk wear. Expensive material. In black, which is a color rarely seen out here where practicality trumps fashion. The fabric is torn, not cut, torn with force judging by the ragged edges. And there, on one corner, a faint stain that might be blood. A nun's habit, his blood goes cold. Matthias knows every member of the small religious community at Sacred Heart Mission, or at least knows of them. Not personally. He makes a point of avoiding town and everyone in it, but the way you know about people in a small territory where everyone's business eventually becomes everyone else's business, whether they want it or not. The mission is 8 miles down the valley, a humble collection of adobe buildings where 3 nuns live and teach and heal. They take in children whose parents can't afford proper schooling, tend to the sick when Dr. Garrett is too drunk to manage it, and generally do more good in a month than most men do in a lifetime. Whatever happened here involved one of them. And if her habit is torn and caught on branches 3 feet off the ground, it wasn't voluntary. Nobody tears their own clothing with that kind of force. Nobody leaves blood on fabric unless something violent occurred. Matthias feels something shift inside him, something cold and hard sliding into place like a rifle bolt chambering around. He knows this feeling. Hasn't felt it in 8 years, not since the army, not since the last time he had to hunt men instead of animals. It's the feeling of purpose, of clarity, of moral certainty that transcends doubt and makes every decision simple. Someone hurt one of those nuns. Someone violated the unwritten law of the frontier that says you don't harm women, especially not women who've dedicated their lives to helping others. That makes this personal, even though Matthias doesn't know the victim, even though he's spent 8 years trying not to care about anyone. Some things are bigger than personal preference. Some evils demand response. He moves faster now, following the signs like he used to follow hostile tracks during his army days. More crushed vegetation, the plants bent in the direction of travel. Broken stems on the wild rose bushes where someone pushed through without caring about the thorns. A pattern of disturbance that speaks of struggle, of someone being dragged or chased through the underbrush. 2 sets of tracks now, the expensive city boots and smaller prints, bare feet judging by the shape, moving erratically like someone running or fighting. And there, on a flat rock still damp from yesterday's afternoon storm, a smear of blood. Not a lot, maybe a tablespoon, but enough to confirm his worst fears. Enough to tell him this isn't a case of someone who twisted an ankle and needs help getting back to town. This is violence. This is predation. This is evil walking in broad daylight. Matthias checks the Winchester, making sure a round is chambered and the safety is off. His jaw is tight, his breathing controlled, but inside he feels something he hasn't felt in 8 years. The cold, focused rage of a man who has seen evil and knows it must be stopped. Not the hot anger that makes men stupid and reckless, but the ice-cold fury that makes them dangerous and effective. The army taught him how to channel that rage, how to use it as fuel without letting it control him. The trick is to separate emotion from action, to feel the anger fully while keeping your hands steady and your mind clear. Rage is power if you master it. Rage is death if it masters you. The trail leads down into Devil's Canyon proper, where the walls rise steep and red on either side. Weathered sandstone marked with bands of different colored sediment laid down millions of years ago, when this was the bottom of an ancient sea. The creek has carved a channel through the solid rock over thousands of years, creating a narrow passage barely 20 feet wide in places. During spring runoff, this canyon becomes a raging torrent that could sweep a horse off its feet. Now in summer, the water is reduced to a trickle that barely covers the rocks. It's late afternoon now, maybe 4 o'clock, and the sun is casting long shadows that make the canyon feel darker than it is. The walls channel the wind in strange ways, creating whispers and moans that sound almost human. Somewhere nearby, a raven calls, harsh and mocking, and Matthias has the sudden irrational feeling that he's being watched by something that isn't entirely natural. He shakes off the superstition. There's nothing supernatural about this canyon, just bad luck and a bad name, and now, apparently, bad men using it as a private hunting ground where they think no one will see what they do. Then he sees her. She's lying by the creek, partially hidden behind a boulder, and at first Matthias thinks she's dead. Her habit is gone, torn away completely, and she's tried to cover herself with large leaves from the columbine and wild plants that grow near the water. Her face is turned away, her dark auburn hair loose and tangled, with dirt and blood. Defensive wounds mark her hands and arms, where she fought whoever did this to her, deep scratches and bruises that tell a story of desperate resistance. Matthias has seen violence before, saw it in the war, where boys barely old enough to shave cut each other apart with bayonets and artillery. Saw it during his years tracking hostile warriors across the plains. Both the violence they inflicted and the violence inflicted upon them by men who claimed to represent civilization. Saw it in the faces of men who wore badges and uniforms while they committed acts that would make animals ashamed. But this hits him different. This is calculated cruelty. This is a man who saw someone vulnerable and alone and decided to destroy her, not for any strategic purpose or in the heat of battle, but simply because he could, because she was there and he wanted to and he thought he'd get away with it. This is evil that wore a respectable face while it committed atrocity. Matthias approaches slowly, making noise so he won't startle her if she's conscious. His boots scuff deliberately on the rocks. He clears his throat. He wants her to know someone's coming. Wants to give her time to prepare herself mentally for another encounter with a man, because right now every man must look like the one who hurt her. 10 feet away, he stops and kneels, making himself smaller, less threatening. He sets the rifle down carefully, keeping his hands visible. "Ma'am," he says quietly, and his voice sounds strange in the echoing canyon. "Can you hear me? I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Matthias Flint. I live on the mountain. I'm going to help you get safe." For a long moment, nothing, just the sound of water trickling over rocks and the distant call of that raven. Then her eyes open, green as spring grass, and she sees him. The scream that comes from her throat is pure animal terror. She scrambles backward, clutching the leaves tighter, her whole body shaking. Her eyes are wide and unfocused, seeing not Matthias, but whoever hurt her, seeing every man as the same threat. "Please." "Yes," she cries, and her voice breaks on the word. "Stop doing that forbidden thing. No more, please God, no more." The words hit Matthias like a physical blow. This is a woman who has been broken, who has had her faith and her safety stripped away, and now she sees a large, wild-looking man approaching, and her traumatized mind can't distinguish rescuer from attacker. She thinks he's here to hurt her again, thinks God has abandoned her. Every instinct Matthias has screams at him to help, to promise everything will be all right. But he knows that would be the worst thing he could do. Right now, he's not a rescuer in her eyes. He's another threat. So he does the hardest thing a man can do when someone needs help. He backs away. Slowly, deliberately, hands raised where she can see them empty and harmless. Matthias stands and takes 5 steps backward, then 5 more, then another 5, until there's 30 feet of space between them. He moves carefully, like he's approaching a wounded animal that might bolt at any sudden motion, telegraphing every movement so she can track him and know he's creating distance, not closing it. "I'm stepping back," he says, his voice calm and steady despite the fury burning in his chest like a furnace. "See? I'm over here now, way over here. Not coming closer. I promise you, ma'am, on my life and my honor, I am not here to hurt you." She's still shaking, still clutching those inadequate leaves, but her eyes are tracking him now, watching, calculating whether this is another trap, another trick, another way for a man to get close enough to hurt her. Matthias removes his bare fur coat, the heavy winter garment he wears even in summer because mountain mornings start cold, and a man never knows when weather might turn. The coat is his most valuable possession, aside from his weapons, cured and sewn by his own hands, from a grizzly he killed 6 years ago in self-defense. It's warm and waterproof and represents months of work. He holds it up so she can see it clearly, this offering of warmth and protection, then lays it carefully on the ground halfway between them. That's for you, he says. When you're ready, no conditions, no strings, no expectation of anything in return. I'm going to turn around now and count to 100. You take what you need, take the coat or don't, your choice. If you want me to leave entirely, I'll leave. If you want help getting somewhere safe, I'll help. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. He turns his back to her, facing away up the canyon, and starts counting out loud. 1, 2, 3. It's one of the hardest things he's ever done, turning his back on someone so vulnerable. Every protective instinct he has rebels against it. Every piece of his training says never turn your back on an uncertain situation. But she doesn't need his protection right now, at least not in the way he wants to give it. She needs control. She needs to feel like she has agency again, like she's a human being with the power to make decisions and not just a victim to be rescued and managed. She needs to choose her own path, even if that path is telling him to leave. 27, 28, 29. He listens without turning. He can hear her breathing, fast and shallow, the rustle of fabric, of leaves being shifted. 47, the soft scrape of bare fur pulled across dirt. She's taken the coat. That's a choice, and choices are power when you've had all power stripped away. 70, 97, 98, 99, 100. When he reaches 100, Matthias stops but doesn't turn. He addresses the canyon wall in front of him, giving her the respect of not forcing eye contact until she's ready. "Ma'am," he says to the weathered red sandstone, "I've got a cabin about 2 miles up the mountain. It's safe. There's clean water, a fire, food, and walls between you and the world. Medical supplies, privacy, or if you'd rather, I can fetch the town doctor, bring him up here quiet-like so you don't have to face a whole town yet. Third option, I can leave you be entirely if that's what you want. Your choice, no pressure. Whatever you decide is the right answer." A long silence. Water trickles over rocks. The raven calls again, closer now. Then, in a voice so broken it barely qualifies as speech, Not town, not yet. I can't face anyone. Can't. The cabin then, Matthias says. That's fine, that's good. I'm going to turn around now, slow. Is that all right with you? Yes. He turns and sees her wrapped in his coat, which is so large for her small frame that she's drowning in it. The sleeves hang a foot past her hands. The hem drags on the ground. She looks like a child playing dress-up in adult clothing, vulnerable and lost, and so fragile it makes his heart ache. Her face is streaked with dirt and tears. There's a cut above her left eyebrow that's still bleeding sluggishly, the blood making a dark trail down the side of her face. Her lower lip is split and swollen. Bruises are already forming on her throat, ugly purple marks in the clear shape of fingers where someone choked her. But she's looking at him now without quite so much terror in her eyes, and that's something. That's progress. That's the first tiny step on what he knows will be a very long road. "Can you walk?" he asks gently. She tries to stand, using the boulder for support, but immediately her legs give out. Shock and trauma have stolen her strength, and she crumples back to the ground with a small cry of frustration and fear. "All right," Matthias says, keeping his voice even and calm. "I'm going to need to carry you. That means I'll have to touch you, pick you up, but I'll keep my eyes forward, move as quickly as I can, and set you down the second we reach the cabin. Can you tolerate that? If not, I can rig a travois, but that'll take time and you need shelter and care soon." She stares at him for a long moment, clearly trying to judge whether she can trust this stranger, trying to weigh her desperate need for help against her terror of being touched by any man. Finally, moving like it cost her everything, she nods. "I'll make it quick," Matthias promises. "And if at any point you need me to stop, you say the word and I'll set you down immediately. You're in control here, ma'am. I'm just the transportation." He approaches slowly, still telegraphing every movement. When he reaches her, he bends carefully and lifts her as gently as he would lift a wounded fawn, one arm under her knees and the other supporting her back. She weighs almost nothing, maybe 110 pounds soaking wet, and he can feel her trembling against his chest like a bird with a broken wing. The bare fur coat wraps around both of them, creating a small pocket of shared warmth. "I've got you," he says quietly as he starts walking back up the trail. "You're safe now. I promise on my life, on my wife's grave, on everything I hold sacred. You are safe." She doesn't respond, but he feels some tiny measure of tension leave her body. Not trust exactly, more like the acknowledgement that she has no other choice. And this man at least hasn't hurt her yet, and maybe that's the best she can hope for right now. Matthias talks as he walks, keeping his voice low and steady, not asking her questions, not expecting her to respond, just filling the silence with words that might provide some small comfort. "Trail's steep here, so I'm going slow. See those aspens up ahead? That means we're about halfway. Aspens don't grow above 10,000 feet, so when you see them, you know you're in the mid-range. My cabin's at 9,000, which is about as high as a man can live year-round without serious difficulty. Higher than that, the snow gets too deep, the cold too extreme. Strong winds that'll knock down anything not built solid." She's listening, he can tell. Not responding, but listening. Good. Talking keeps both of them focused on something other than what happened. "That's an elk trail crossing here. See the deep prints? Elk weigh 600–700 pounds, so they leave marks. They use the same trails year after year, generation after generation. Smart animals. Why forge a new path when the old one works? That's mountain wisdom right there." The sun is lower now, painting the western peaks in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, if you're in a position to appreciate it. Matthias isn't. His arms are burning from the sustained effort of carrying a full-grown woman 2 miles uphill, but he doesn't stop, doesn't rest, doesn't slow his pace. She needs shelter and safety, and his arms can ache on their own time. Around the half-mile mark, she passes out against his shoulder. Maybe exhaustion, maybe her mind's way of escaping for a while. Either way, it's probably a mercy. Let her consciousness retreat. Let her have whatever refuge sleep can provide from the horror she's lived through. As he walks in silence now, carrying his broken cargo with all the care a man can manage, Matthias talks to ghosts. "Clara," he says to the mountain and the ski and whatever might be listening beyond, "if you're watching, guide me. I failed you and Thomas. Wasn't there when you needed me most. Couldn't save you from that fever. Came home to empty rooms and graves and a life that didn't make sense anymore. But I'm here now for this woman, and I won't fail her. Whatever it takes, whoever did this, I'll make it right. That's a promise, that's a vow. On your memory and our son's, I swear it." The mountain offers no answer except the steady crunch of his boots on the trail, the whisper of wind through the pines, and the distant call of an eagle soaring overhead. Circling and circling like a blessing or a warning, or both. By the time Matthias reaches his cabin, the sun is low in the western sky, and his arms feel like they're filled with molten lead. But he doesn't stop, doesn't rest, not until he's pushed awake in the door with his shoulder and laid her gently on his bed, the only bed, the one he built from pine logs and rope webbing. He covers her with clean blankets, stacks 2 more within reach in case she gets cold during the night, then steps immediately outside to give her privacy. The air outside is cooling rapidly, the way it does in the mountains when the sun drops below the horizon. Within an hour, it'll be 45 degrees. Within 3 hours, 35. A woman in shock could easily die from exposure at those temperatures. But she's safe now. She's in shelter, and Matthias will make damn sure she stays safe, even if that means sleeping on the porch in the cold and standing guard all night like a solitary sentry. He sits on the wooden bench he built next to the door, his rifle across his knees, and begins the methodical work of cleaning and checking his weapons. The Winchester needs oil after being carried through dusty terrain. The pistol needs its cylinder checked. The knife needs its edge tested against his thumb, a light brush that tells him it's sharp enough to shave with. His hands shake slightly, not from exertion, but from the rage that's building in his chest like steam in a kettle with no release valve. Someone did this. Some man walked into these mountains, found a woman alone, and decided to destroy her for no reason except that he could. Because she was vulnerable and he was strong, and he thought the isolation of Devil's Canyon meant he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. That man is wrong. Matthias knows, with absolute certainty born of experience and cold fury, that he's going to find out who did this. He's going to track them the way he used to track hostile warriors across 300 miles of plains. He's going to identify them with the same patient observation he used to identify enemy positions before an attack. And when he finds them, there will be a reckoning. Not hot-blooded revenge, not the kind of stupid violence that feels good in the moment but accomplishes nothing. Cold, calculated justice, the kind that makes an example, the kind that ensures this never happens again, not to this woman, not to anyone. Jeremiah ambles over to the porch and nuzzles his shoulder, a gesture of comfort or solidarity, or maybe just the mule's way of saying he's hungry and would like his evening feed. Matthias scratches behind the animal's ears absently. "I know, old friend," he murmurs. "I know, it's been a long time since we had company. 8 years since anyone but me slept in that cabin. But this is different, and this is what being a man means. This is what Clara would have wanted me to do. This is duty." Inside the cabin, he can hear small sounds of movement, water splashing in the basin he left beside the bed, full of clean creek water with a cloth for washing. Fabric rustling as she changes into the clean shirt he laid out, one of his old ones, soft from years of wear. And beneath it all, the sound of someone trying very hard not to cry and failing. Choked sobs that speak of violation and grief and the death of innocence. Matthias closes his eyes and makes a silent promise to whoever's listening. To God, to Clara's spirit, to the mountain itself, to the ghost of the man he used to be before failure taught him to stop caring. This woman will have justice. This evil will not stand. And if civilization won't provide it, if the law turns blind and the righteous stay silent, then he'll deliver it himself. Mountain justice. The kind that doesn't involve courts and lawyers and men in fancy suits who care more about property rights than human dignity. The kind that involves a man taking personal responsibility for the evil committed in his territory and making absolutely certain it never happens again. The sun sets red over the western peaks, painting the world in blood and gold, and Matthias Cordell Flint sits guard over a broken nun and plans for war. Not the war he fought in his youth, with armies and flags and the illusion of honor. A different kind of war. Personal, intimate. The kind where there are no spectators and no medals, and the only reward is knowing you did what needed doing when everyone else looked away. The stars come out, one by one, familiar constellations that have guided him through 8 years of solitude. He knows them all. The Big Dipper, pointing to Polaris, Orion's belt, Cassiopeia, like a crooked W across the northern sky. On nights when the loneliness was too much, he'd lie on this porch and trace patterns in the stars, imagining Clara and Thomas up there somewhere, watching him fumble through a life he never wanted. Tonight he doesn't look at the stars. Tonight he watches the tree line, the approaches to his cabin, the shadows where threat might hide. Tonight he's a soldier again, standing watch, and the precious cargo he's protecting is more valuable than anything he carried during his 12 years in uniform. Inside, the crying has stopped. Either she's fallen asleep or she's too exhausted to weep anymore. Either way, the silence feels heavy with unspoken pain. Matthias loads his pipe with tobacco, strikes a match, and smokes in the gathering dark. The ritual is calming, the familiar burn and draw and release, helping to settle his racing thoughts. He needs to think clearly now, needs to plan, needs to figure out who did this and how to prove it and how to make sure justice is served without getting himself or the woman killed in the process. First thing tomorrow, he'll talk to her. Get her story, find out what she remembers, who she saw, what details might help identify her attacker. Then he'll scout Devil's Canyon properly, look for more evidence, tracks, anything the man might have left behind. Rich men in fancy boots make mistakes. They're careless because they're arrogant, because they believe wealth and status protect them from consequences. This time, that arrogance will be their downfall. The temperature drops to 40 degrees, then 35. Matthias pulls his collar up, but doesn't go inside for a heavier coat. That would mean leaving his post, even for a minute, and he won't do that. Not tonight. Tonight he stands guard like a soldier on perimeter duty, and if he's cold, well, he's been cold before and survived it. Around midnight, he hears movement inside. Footsteps, light and hesitant. The door opens a crack, and there she is, wrapped in blankets, her face pale in the moonlight. "Mr. Flint?" Her voice is hoarse from crying. "Yes, ma'am." "Why are you out here?" "Standing guard, making sure you're safe." "But it's cold." "I've been colder." She's silent for a moment, then, "What's your name, your first name?" "Matthias." "Matthias," she repeats, testing the word. "That's biblical. The apostle chosen to replace Judas." "Didn't know that. My mother chose it. She died when I was young." "I'm Grace, Sister Grace Catherine Abbott, but just Grace is fine now." "Grace is a good name." Another silence, then, "Thank you for finding me, for giving me space, for being kind." "No thanks needed. It's what any decent man would do." "No," she says, and there's steel in her voice despite the trembling. "It's not. Most men, most men aren't decent." She closes the door quietly, and Matthias is alone again with the stars and the cold in his thoughts. But something has shifted. She's not just a victim he rescued. She's Grace, a person with a name and a voice, and despite everything that happened to her, the strength to say thank you to a stranger who gave her back a tiny measure of control. That takes courage. Matthias Flint sits on his porch through the long, cold night, keeping watch, and he knows with absolute certainty that his life just changed. For 8 years, he's been dead, going through the motions of survival, but not truly living. For 8 years, he's hidden from responsibility and relationship and anything that might require him to care about another human being. But duty found him anyway, in the form of a broken nun and a mystery in a cursed canyon. And maybe, just maybe, this is his chance at redemption. His chance to be the man he should have been 8 years ago when fever took his family. His chance to stand for someone who needs standing for, to fight for someone who can't fight alone. His chance to matter. The night is long and cold and full of stars, and Matthias keeps watch until dawn breaks gold over the eastern peaks. The trail down to Redemption Falls takes 3 hours on foot, but Matthias pushes Jeremiah harder than usual, cutting the time to just under 2. The mule complains with strategic stubbornness, planting his hooves and snorting disapproval at every switchback. But Matthias is insistent. Every minute he's away from the cabin is a minute Grace is alone and vulnerable, and that knowledge sits like a stone in his chest. The town appears below him as he rounds the final bend, a collection of wooden buildings and dirt streets sprawled along the valley floor where Pine River cuts through on its way to join the Arkansas. Redemption Falls isn't much to look at, maybe 300 souls if you count generous. Most of them miners or loggers, or the people who make their living serving miners and loggers. The main street runs north to south, lined with the usual frontier establishments. McKenna's Saloon at the north end, where Clara McKenna serves whiskey and maintains order with an iron will and a loaded shotgun. The general store, the assayer's office, the bank that Reed owns, the church with its simple wooden steeple pointing toward heaven like an accusation. And there at the southern end of town, Sacred Heart Mission, a humble collection of adobe buildings where 3 nuns live and teach children whose parents can't afford proper schooling. Grace is home for the past 6 years, though Matthias wonders if she'll ever be able to return there after what happened. He avoids the main street entirely, taking a back trail that brings him to the rear of Dr. Samuel Garrett's office without being seen by half the town. Matthias has no interest in answering questions about why he's come down from his mountain, or where he's been, or what brings him to civilization after months of absence. The less people know, the better. Garrett's office sits above the general store, accessed by an exterior staircase that creaks alarmingly under Matthias's weight. The doctor keeps irregular hours, which is a polite way of saying he's usually too drunk to maintain a proper practice. But he's the only doctor within 50 miles, and his license is legitimate even if his sobriety isn't. Matthias knocks once, hard. No answer. He knocks again, louder. A voice from inside, thick with sleep and alcohol. "Go away, office hours are Monday and Thursday." "It's Monday, Garrett. Open up." "Come back afternoon." "Open this door or I'll kick it down." Shuffling footsteps, the sound of bottles being moved. Then the door cracks open and Dr. Samuel Garrett's bleary face appears, looking like death warmed over. He's 54 years old but looks 70, with red-rimmed eyes, broken veins across his nose, and hands that shake like leaves in a storm. He squints at Matthias with confusion that slowly shifts to recognition. Flint? That's you? What the hell are you doing in town? Need your professional services, medical examination, documentation for legal purposes. Garrett laughs, a bitter sound. Professional services. That's funny. I'm a drunk, Flint. Everybody knows it. My documentation won't be worth the paper it's written on. You're a drunk who's still a licensed physician, and right now you're the only option I've got. What kind of examination? Matthias lowers his voice. The kind that documents injuries from an assault. The kind that might end up in front of a judge. Garrett's expression shifts, the alcoholic fog clearing slightly as his medical training kicks in despite years of neglect. How bad? Bad enough. Woman was attacked yesterday, needs proper documentation of injuries before they fade. Bring her here. Can't. She's not ready to face town yet. And if word gets out that she's seeking medical help, it'll complicate things. Need you to come to me. Quietly. Garrett steps back into his office and Matthias follows. The place is a disaster. Empty bottles everywhere, medical techs piled in random stacks, instruments that need cleaning. But beneath the chaos, Matthias can see the bones of a proper practice. Garrett wasn't always a drunk. Once upon a time, he was a real doctor who cared about his patients. Who attacked her? Garrett asks, pulling on a coat that smells like 3-day-old whiskey. That's complicated, and before I tell you, I need to know something. Dalton Reed holds your mortgage, doesn't he? Garrett freezes. How did you know that? Small town, people talk. So here's my question, and I need you to answer honest. If I tell you Reed's involved, are you going to run straight to him? Are you going to protect your financial interests over doing what's right? The doctor looks at Matthias for a long moment, and something shifts behind his bloodshot eyes. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's the ghost of the man he used to be before his wife died in childbirth, and he climbed into a bottle and never climbed back out. My wife, Mary, Garrett says slowly, died because I wasn't sober enough to save her. Our baby, too. That was 8 years ago. Every day since, I've been trying to drink myself to death because I don't have the courage to use my pistol. So no, Flint, I'm not going to protect Dalton Reed or my mortgage or anything else. Because I'm already dead. I'm just waiting for my body to figure it out. Then get your medical bag. We're going up the mountain. Reed did this. Reed did this. Garrett nods once, sharp and decisive. He gathers his instruments with hands that still shake but move with purpose now. Stethoscope, bandages, various bottles of medicine and antiseptic. He packs everything into a worn leather bag that's seen better days but is fundamentally sound. I'll need to examine her in private, Garrett says. No men present, not even you. She's been through trauma. The last thing she needs is an audience. Agreed, I'll wait outside, but Garrett, she's fragile right now. Scared. You treat her with anything less than complete respect, we're going to have problems. Clear? Clear as glass. I may be a drunk, but I'm still a doctor. I know how to handle assault victims. They leave through the back stairs, avoiding the main street. Matthias has Jeremiah, but Garrett needs a horse. They detour to the livery stable where Garrett keeps an old mare named Bess, who's seen better days but is still serviceable. The stable boy, a Chinese kid named Wei, who can't be more than 15, gives them both a curious look but doesn't ask questions. Smart kid. The ride up the mountain takes nearly 3 hours. Garrett isn't used to hard riding anymore, and his mare is slow. They travel in silence mostly, Garrett clearly suffering from withdrawal and exertion. Matthias scanning the trail constantly for any sign they're being followed. Around the 2-hour mark, Garrett speaks. This woman, she going to press charges? That's the plan. Reed will destroy her, you know that, right? He'll use every bit of influence he has to make her look like a liar or a hysteric or worse. He'll drag her name through the mud until nobody believes a word she says. I know. And you'll be caught in the crossfire. Reed doesn't forget people who cross him. Ask the 3 men you sent back to him with broken fingers. They had accidents after that. One fell down a mine shaft. Another got trampled by his own horse. The third just disappeared. Everyone knows Reed was behind it, but nobody can prove anything. I'm not afraid of Reed. You should be. Money is power out here, and he has more money than talk. Money doesn't stop bullets. No, but it buys men who shoot them. You ready for that? Ready to spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder? Matthias thinks about Grace sitting in his cabin right now, alone and terrified, clutching a rifle she barely knows how to use. Thinks about the defensive wounds on her hands where she fought back. Thinks about the way she said, "Stop doing that forbidden thing," in a voice that will haunt him until his dying day. "Yes," he says simply. "I'm ready." They reach the cabin around noon. Matthias calls out before they approach, letting Grace know it's safe. She appears in the doorway with the Winchester held at low ready, finger off the trigger but ready to move if needed. When she sees Garrett, fear flashes across her face. "This is Dr. Garrett," Matthias says gently. "He's here to examine you and document your injuries. I trust him, but if you're not comfortable, we can find another way." Grace studies Garrett for a long moment. The doctor looks terrible, obviously suffering, but there's something in his eyes that seems genuine. Maybe it's shared pain, recognizing shared pain. "All right," she says quietly, but Matthias stays close, just outside the door. "Of course." Matthias shows Garrett inside, then retreats to the porch. He sits with his back against the wall, rifle across his knees, and listens to the murmur of voices inside. Grace's voice, soft and hesitant. Garrett's voice, professional and kind, asking questions in medical terminology that softens the horror of what he's documenting. The examination takes 40 minutes. When Garrett emerges, his face is grim and he's no longer shaking. His hands are steady as he writes in a small notebook, documenting everything with precise medical language. "How is she?" Matthias asks. "Physically, she'll heal. Bruising, lacerations, internal trauma, consistent with forcible assault. Defensive wounds on hands and forearms. Everything I'd expect to see from a violent rape. The physical evidence is clear and unambiguous. And mentally? That's going to take longer. She's in shock still, dissociating. Keep her warm, keep her fed, let her talk when she wants to, and be silent when she doesn't. Don't push. And Flint? She's going to have nightmares, panic attacks, moments where she breaks down for no apparent reason. That's all normal. Trauma does that to people." "I know, I've seen it before. Garrett looks at him with new understanding. "The war?" "The war, and after." The doctor nods, then pulls a piece of paper from his bag. "This is my official medical report, dated, signed, with my license number. It'll hold up in any court in the territory. Keep it safe. Make copies if you can." Matthias takes the document and reads it. The language is clinical and precise, laying out the evidence of assault in terms that can't be misinterpreted or dismissed. It's exactly what they need. "What do I owe you?" Matthias asks. "Nothing. This one's on me. Call it penance for all the times I've stayed silent when I should have spoken up. Reed holds your mortgage. You know he'll come after you when this gets out." "Let him. I told you, Flint, I'm already dead. Might as well do one good thing before I actually die." Garrett mounts his horse and prepares to leave. Then he pauses. "There's something else you should know. Grace isn't the first." Matthias goes very still. "What do you mean?" 2 years ago, Sarah McKenzie came to my office. She had injuries similar to Grace's. When I asked what happened, she said she fell down some stairs. But I've been a doctor long enough to know the difference between fall injuries and assault injuries. I documented it anyway, told her she should report it, but she refused. Said it would be her word against a powerful man's, and she'd lose. 3 months later, she left town. Went to Denver, far as I know. Did she name the man? No, but the way she flinched when Dalton Reed's name came up in conversation. I had my suspicions. Never could prove anything. And you didn't report it? Garrett looks ashamed. I was more of a drunk back then, and Reed held my mortgage even then. I told myself it wasn't my business, that I couldn't know for sure, that it would cause more problems than it solved. I've regretted that silence every day since. Any other women? Maybe. 6 months ago, Lily Chen worked at the laundry. Chinese girl, maybe 20 years old. She showed up at the mission one day covered in bruises, wouldn't say what happened. Next week, her whole family packed up and left. Said they were going to San Francisco, but it felt like they were running. And there's been others over the years. Women who left town suddenly. Families who moved away without explanation. Could be coincidence. Could be Reed's been doing this for years and getting away with it because his victims were too scared to speak up. This information changes the calculus significantly. If Reed has multiple victims, if there's a pattern, then Grace isn't just fighting for justice for herself. She's fighting for all the women who came before and all the women who might come after. I need names, Matthias says. Everyone you can remember who might be connected to Reed. Every woman who left suddenly, every family that moved away, every suspicious injury you treated over the years. I'll write it down. Give me a few days to go through my records, jog my memory. But Flint, be careful. If Reed figures out you're investigating him, he won't wait for a trial. He'll have you killed and make it look like an accident. Let him try. Garrett rides away, leaving Matthias alone with his thoughts and a growing sense of the scope of what they're up against. This isn't just one man's crime. This is a systematic pattern of abuse enabled by wealth and power and an entire town's willingness to look the other way. But patterns can be documented. Patterns can be proven. And patterns, once exposed, can bring down even the most powerful men. Matthias goes back inside, where Grace is sitting by the fire wrapped in blankets despite the warm afternoon. She looks up when he enters, and he sees the question in her eyes. Garrett believes you, Matthias says. Documented everything. And Grace, there's more. He thinks Reed's done this before, multiple times. We're not just fighting for you, we're fighting for every woman he's hurt. Grace closes her eyes, and a single tear slides down her cheek. How many? Don't know yet, but we're going to find out. And we're going to make sure everyone knows what he is. 3 days pass. 3 days during which Matthias leaves Grace alone only long enough to scout Devil's Canyon and search for evidence. He finds boot prints that match the expensive city boots, finds signs of a camp where Reed's men waited, finds a silver button that must have come off during the struggle. Small things, but every piece of evidence matters. On the 4th day, word reaches the mountain that Sacred Heart Mission has noticed Sister Grace's disappearance and organized search parties. Mother Superior Beatrice O'Malley is leading the search personally, and the entire town is buzzing with speculation about where the missing nun might be. Matthias knows they can't hide forever. Sooner or later, Grace will have to return, will have to face the town and tell her story. The question is when? Do they wait longer, gather more evidence, build a stronger case? Or do they move now while Grace's injuries are still visible and documented? Grace makes the decision for them. I want to go back, she says on the morning of the 5th day. I want to tell Mother Beatrice what happened. I want to make my accusation public before Reed has time to build his story. Are you sure? Once you go public, there's no taking it back. Reed will come at you with everything he has. I'm sure every day I wait is another day he thinks he got away with it. Another day, some other woman might cross his path. I won't let my fear protect him. There's steel in her voice that wasn't there 5 days ago. Trauma has broken her, yes, but something else is happening too. She's finding strength in her anger, in her determination that this will not stand. Then we go today, Matthias says, but we do it smart. We go straight to the mission, tell Mother Beatrice first, get her on our side, then we decide together when and how to make this public. They ride down the mountain together, Grace on Jeremiah, Matthias walking alongside. She's wearing Clara's calico dress and a bonnet to hide her face, trying to attract as little attention as possible. But in a town of 300 people, a woman returning after a mysterious disappearance is impossible to hide. By the time they reach the edge of town, word is spread. People stare, whisper, point. Matthias can feel their eyes on him, on Grace, can feel the speculation and gossip starting to swirl like a storm-gathering force. Mrs. Patterson, the general store owner's wife, steps into the street. Sister Grace, thank the Lord you're safe. We've been so worried. Where have you been? Grace doesn't answer, just keeps her eyes forward. Another voice, one of the miners. That's the mountain man, the hermit. What's she doing with him? More whispers, more stares. Matthias feels Grace's fear rising, can sense her starting to panic at the attention. He moves closer to Jeremiah, putting himself between her and the growing crowd. Make way, he says quietly, but there's steel in his voice. The lady needs to get to the mission. They push through to Sacred Heart, where Mother Superior Beatrice is waiting on the steps. She's 62 years old, Irish, with a face that's seen hardship and survived it. When she sees Grace, relief and concern war on her features. Child, she says, her accent thick with emotion, Come inside. Come now. Inside the mission's small parlor, Grace breaks. She tells Beatrice everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of grief and anger and relief at finally being able to speak to someone who might believe her. Matthias stands by the door, giving them privacy but staying close enough to intervene if needed. Beatrice listens without interrupting, her weathered hands gripping Grace's tighter and tighter as the story unfolds. When Grace finishes, the Mother Superior is silent for a full minute. Then, Dalton Reed. Yes, I believe you. Grace sobs with relief. You do? Child, you're the third woman to come to me with a story about Dalton Reed. The others were too frightened to report it officially, but I've known for years what that man is. I've suspected for longer. But suspicion isn't proof, and without proof, she trails off, clearly angry at her own powerlessness. Third, Matthias speaks up. Dr. Garrett mentioned Sarah Mackenzie. Who was the second? Lily Chen, Chinese girl, worked at her family's laundry. She came to me 6 months ago, terrified and injured. Wouldn't say what happened at first, but eventually told me Reed had cornered her in the alley behind his office. She fought him off that time, got away, but he threatened her family, said he'd have them all deported if she spoke up. Chinese Exclusion Act makes them vulnerable, gives men like Reed power over them. The Chens left town within a week. Do you know where they went? San Francisco. Lily's uncle has a business there. I have the address if you need it. This is good. Witnesses a pattern, evidence of systematic abuse that can't be explained away as a single misunderstanding or false accusation. What happens now? Beatrice asks. How do we stop him? Before anyone can answer, there's a commotion outside. Voices raised, the sound of horses. Matthias moves to the window and looks out. Dalton Reed has arrived, along with his brother Jacob and 2 other men Matthias doesn't recognize. They're dismounting in front of the mission, and Reed has the expression of a man who owns the world and knows it. He's here, Matthias says quietly. Grace, stay inside. Beatrice, with me. This is about to get interesting. They step outside together, the nun and the mountain man presenting a united front. Reed stops when he sees them, his confident smile faltering slightly when he recognizes Matthias. Flint, Reed says, his voice carrying that smooth charm that hides rot underneath. What brings you down from your mountain? And Mother Superior, good afternoon. I heard Sister Grace has returned. What a relief. We've all been so worried. I'm sure you have, Beatrice says dryly. Reed's eyes narrow. Is Sister Grace all right? We heard she'd been missing, some kind of accident on the mountain. Not an accident, Matthias says flatly. An assault. The silence that follows is electric. Reed's smile doesn't falter, but something shifts in his eyes. Calculation. Danger. An assault? How terrible. By whom? You know by whom. Reed laughs, but it sounds forced. Are you accusing me of something, Flint? Because if you are, I hope you have evidence to back up such a serious claim. We have evidence. Medical documentation, witness testimony, physical evidence from the scene, everything we need to see you hanged. Reed's brother Jacob shifts uncomfortably. The 2 other men, clearly hired muscle, move their hands closer to their pistols. The tension ratchets up another notch. This is absurd, Reed says, his voice hardening. Sister Grace is clearly traumatized from whatever happened to her on that mountain. Perhaps she got lost, encountered a bear or mountain lion, and her mind has confused the details. Trauma does that, as I understand it, makes people remember things that didn't happen or remember them wrong. She remembered just fine, Matthias says. Remembered you dragging her into Devil's Canyon. Remembered you telling her no one would believe her because you own this town. Remembered every second of what you did to her. Reed takes a step forward, his mask slipping. Careful, Flint. You're making accusations that could get you killed. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Men have accidents all the time out here. Fall down mine shafts, get kicked by horses, disappear into the wilderness and never come back. Would be a shame if something happened to the mountain hermit who can't mind his own business. Matthias smiles, and it's not a pleasant expression. Try it, see what happens. They stand there, 2 men on the edge of violence, while the town watches and waits. Then Father Jerome Whitmore comes rushing out of the church, wringing his hands with anxiety. Gentlemen, please. This is holy ground. Whatever grievances you have, they can be settled peacefully through proper channels. There are no proper channels when the rich can buy their way out of resources, Beatrice says sharply. And Father, with respect, you've been taking Reed's donations for years. I wonder if that's colored your judgment about his character. Whitmore flushes red. I would never. Mr. Reed is a respected member of this community. Mr. Reed is a rapist, Matthias says bluntly, and the word hangs in the air like a gunshot. The crowd that's gathered gasps. Some people look shocked. Others look skeptical. A few look knowing, like they've suspected this all along but never had the courage to say it out loud. Reed's face goes purple with rage. How dare you? I'll sue you for slander. I'll have you arrested. You'll do nothing, Beatrice interrupts, because Sister Grace is going to tell her story to the sheriff. And we'll let the law decide who's telling the truth. The law? Reed laughs. Sheriff Cooper works for me, owes me money, same as half this town. You think he's going to arrest his employer based on the word of some hysterical nun and a crazy mountain man? He's probably right about that. Matthias has seen Sheriff Jonas Cooper around town, knows the man's reputation. Cooper is 48, competent enough at keeping basic order, but he's on Reed's payroll in all but name. Expecting justice from him is like expecting rain in the desert. But before Matthias can respond, another voice speaks up from the crowd. Clara McKenna, the saloon owner, steps forward. She's 34, tough as nails, with red hair and eyes that miss nothing. I believe her, Clara says clearly, and I think there's a lot of women in this town who believe her too. Women who've seen how Reed looks at us, women who've had close calls or know someone who did. We just never spoke up before because we knew no one would listen. A murmur runs through the crowd. A few other women step forward, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. Miss Kaufman, an older German woman who runs a boarding house. Young Jenny Harrison, whose husband works in Reed's mine. Two of the Chinese women from the laundry, speaking softly in Cantonese. Reed sees this, and his expression shifts from rage to something more calculating. This is a conspiracy. These women have been turned against me by Flint and his lies. I've done nothing but support this community, provide homes, donate to worthy causes. And this is how I'm repaid? With baseless accusations? Then let's have a trial, Matthias says. Put it to a jury. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear. We don't need a trial for false accusations. We need to restore order and send a message that this kind of slander won't be tolerated. Reed turns to his men. Take Flint into custody. Citizens arrest for disturbing the peace and making false accusations. The two hired guns move forward, hands on their pistols. Matthias doesn't move, but his body language shifts subtly into combat readiness. He's not wearing his pistol visibly, but he has a knife in his belt, and 8 years of mountain living have made him dangerous in ways that city toughs can't imagine. Think carefully, Matthias says quietly to the approaching men. You pull those pistols, people die. Maybe me, probably you. Definitely your boss, because if this goes to shooting, he's my first target. The men hesitate. They're hired muscle, not killers, and there's something in Matthias's eyes that tells them he's not bluffing. Then a new voice cuts through the tension. That's enough. Everyone turns. Judge Cornelius T. Blackwell is walking down the street, leaning on his cane, his face stern. He's 66 years old, walks with a limp from a Civil War injury, and has a reputation for absolute fairness that even Reed can't buy his way around. Your Honor, Reed says smoothly, the mask sliding back into place. Thank God you're here. These people are making wild accusations. I heard the accusations, Mr. Reed. I heard everything. And I'm ordering you and Mr. Flint both to stand down while we sort this out properly. There's nothing to sort out. It's all lies. Then you'll have no trouble answering questions under oath. Sheriff Cooper, I want statements taken from all parties involved. Sister Grace, Mr. Flint, Mr. Reed, and anyone else with relevant information. This matter will be investigated properly, and if there's evidence of a crime, it will go to trial. Reed's face goes cold. You can't be serious. You're going to take the word of a nun over mine? I'm going to follow the evidence wherever it leads. That's how the law works, Mr. Reed, even for rich men. Especially for rich men, because power without accountability is tyranny. The judge's words hang in the air. and Matthias sees something he didn't expect. Hope. Not from Reed or his supporters, but from the women in the crowd, from Clara and Beatrice, and the others who've been silent too long. Reed realizes he's lost control of the situation. His expression hardens. This isn't over, Flint. Not by a long shot. No, Matthias agrees, it's just beginning. Reed and his men mount up and ride away. That night, Jacob Reed follows his brother to the study. Marcus is already 3 whiskeys deep, rage simmering beneath forced calm. You did it, Jacob says quietly. Not a question. Marcus slams his glass down. Don't start. I've ignored the rumors for years, told myself they were lies. But that nun's face, Marcus, the way she looked at you, the way you looked at her. She's a liar. They're all liars. Are they? Jacob's voice cracks. Sarah Mackenzie, Lily Chen, that Ute girl 3 years ago, all liars? They got what they wanted. Money, attention, revenge for imagined slights. Jacob stares at his brother like seeing him for the first time. You're my blood, my only family. I've stood with you through everything. But this? Then stand with me now or get out. The choice hangs between them. Jacob thinks of all the years of loyalty, of brotherhood. Then he thinks of that nun's broken voice, of justice, of what kind of man he wants to be. I'm out, he says quietly. The next morning, Jacob sends Judge Blackwell a sealed envelope containing financial records. Every payment Marcus made to Sheriff Cooper, every bribe, every threat documented in his own hand. It's not much, but it's something. But Matthias knows this is far from finished. The battle has been joined, the lines have been drawn, and now the real war begins. A war for justice, a war for truth, a war for the soul of a town that's been looking the other way for too long. And Matthias Cordell Flint, hermit and failed husband and broken soldier, has just committed himself to fighting it. 4 weeks pass like water flowing over stones, steady and relentless. 4 weeks during which Redemption Falls divides into camps. Those who believe Grace, those who believe Reed, and those who sit on the fence waiting to see which way the wind blows before committing. Judge Blackwell has scheduled a formal hearing for August 15th, when the territorial circuit brings him back through this part of Colorado. Until then, everyone waits. But waiting isn't passive. It's a battlefield all its own. Matthias has moved into a small room behind Clara McKenna's saloon, close enough to the mission to respond if Grace needs him, far enough to preserve her reputation. He takes odd jobs around town, fixing fences and chopping wood, anything to keep himself visible and available. He's not hiding, he's making a statement. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm watching. Grace stays at the mission, teaching the children who still come despite their parents' reservations. Some families have pulled their children out, afraid of an association with scandal. Others have sent them more regularly, a quiet show of support. The division runs through families, through friendships, through the very fabric of the community. Reed's campaign has been systematic and brutal. Rumors spread like wildfire. Grace is mentally unstable, always was odd, probably imagined the whole thing. Or maybe she and Matthias planned it together, trying to extort money from an innocent man. Or maybe she was having an affair with someone and got caught, needed to explain her condition somehow, picked the richest target she could blame. The rumors are vicious and effective. By the 3rd week, half the town doubts Grace's story despite the medical evidence. By the 4th week, Father Whitmore has privately suggested to Beatrice that perhaps Grace should take a leave of absence, go back east for a while, let things cool down. Beatrice's response, delivered in her sharp Irish brogue, is unprintable. Matthias sits in Clara's saloon on a hot afternoon in early August, nursing a cup of coffee and listening to the conversations around him. 3 miners at the bar are debating whether Reed could really have done it. A merchant and his wife in the corner are arguing about whether their daughter should continue lessons at the mission. 2 of Reed's employees are laughing about that crazy nun and her mountain man protector. Clara slides into the chair across from Matthias. She's been a rock through all of this, publicly supporting Grace even as her business suffers. Reed's men don't drink at her establishment anymore, and some of the other patrons have followed suit. She's losing money every day, but she doesn't flinch. You look like hell, she says bluntly. Feel worse. Heard Reed's lawyer arrived from Denver yesterday. Fancy man named Hutchins. They're building their defense. Let them build. We've got truth on our side. Truth doesn't always win, Matthias. You know that. He does know that. Knows it bone deep from years of watching justice fail, watching the powerful crush the weak, watching good people lose to bad people who have better lawyers and more money. Then we make sure this time is different, he says. Clara studies him with those sharp eyes that see too much. You care about her, Grace. I care about justice. That's not what I asked. Matthias doesn't answer. The truth is complicated. Yes, he cares about Grace, cares about her courage and her strength, and the way she refuses to be broken despite everything Reed did to her. But it's more than that. She represents something, a chance at redemption, a purpose, a reason to be something other than a hermit waiting to die on a mountain. There's something you should know, Clara says, lowering her voice. I've been asking around, quiet-like, talking to women who might know something about Reed's past. And I found someone. Matthias leans forward. Who? Naomi Songbird, Ute woman married to a white trader, lives on the edge of town. She's a midwife and herbalist, bridges the gap between the Ute community and ours. She asked to meet you. Says she has information. When? Tonight, after dark. She doesn't want to be seen talking to you publicly. Reed has a long memory for people who cross him. Matthias nods. Tell her I'll be there. That night, he walks to the small cabin where Naomi lives with her husband. She's 38 years old, with traditional Ute braids mixed with settler-style clothing, a woman who exists between two worlds. When she opens the door, her eyes are wary but determined. You're Flint, she says. It's not a question. I am. Come in. We need to talk. Inside, her cabin smells like sage and dried herbs. She offers him tea, which he accepts. They sit across from each other at a rough wooden table, and for a moment neither speaks. Clara says you have information about Reed, Matthias finally says. I do, but first I need to know, are you really going to see this through? Or are you going to lose your nerve when Reed starts making your life difficult? I don't lose my nerve. Naomi studies him, then nods. 10 years ago, soldiers came to my village. I was 28. They said they were looking for hostile warriors. What they were really looking for was women alone. 3 soldiers found me gathering water by the river. They did to me what Reed did to your sister Grace. Matthias goes very still. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. I told no one for years because who would believe a Ute woman over white soldiers? But then I heard about Grace and I thought maybe this time someone will listen. Maybe this time the monster faces consequences. You're willing to testify about what happened to you? No, different men, different crime, too long ago. But I'm willing to testify about what I know of Reed, because he didn't just hurt Grace, he hurt my niece. The room feels suddenly colder. When? 3 years ago, she was 17, beautiful girl named Ayashe, which means little one in our language. She works sometimes in town, cleaning houses, earning money for her family. Reed hired her to clean his office. She came home one day with bruises, wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat. 2 weeks later, she walked into the mountains and didn't come back. We found her body in the spring when the snow melted. She'd thrown herself off a cliff. Matthias feels rage building in his chest like a fire being fed kindling. Did she tell anyone what he did? She told me, the night before she died, made me promise not to seek revenge because she knew it would only bring more pain to our people. Reed has power. He could have us all removed from our lands if he chose. The army would back him. The government would back him. One dead Ute girl against a wealthy white man. We knew how that would go. But you're telling me now. Because Grace is white, a nun, someone the law might actually protect. If she speaks and we speak with her, if there's a pattern, maybe this time justice is possible. Matthias thinks about Ayashe, 17 years old, so destroyed by what Reed did that death seemed preferable to living with the memory. Thinks about Sarah Mackenzie, driven out of town, Lily Chen, forced to flee with her family, Grace, broken but fighting back. How many others? How many women has Reed destroyed? I need you to write down everything you know, Matthias says, dates, details, anything that establishes a pattern, and I need you to be ready to testify when the hearing comes. I will, but Matthias, Reed will come after me for this, after my people. Are you prepared to protect us? I'll do everything I can. That's not the same as yes. No, Matthias admits, it's not. But it's all I can promise, Naomi nods slowly. Then I'll take that risk. Because some things are worth risking everything for. Justice is one of them. Matthias leaves her cabin with new determination and new fury. The pattern is clear now. Reed has been doing this for years, maybe longer. Picking victims he thinks are vulnerable. A Ute girl with no legal standing. A Chinese immigrant family that can be intimidated. A poor woman with no connections. He's been predator operating with impunity because wealth and race and gender create a shield around him that seems impenetrable. But shields have weak points. Every fortress has a gate, and Matthias is going to find it. He's walking back toward town when he hears footsteps behind him. Fast, approaching quickly. His hand moves to his knife, but before he can draw, a voice calls out, "Mr. Flint, wait, please." Matthias turns. A young man is running toward him, maybe 22 years old, blonde hair, skinny build, nervous as a colt. Matthias recognizes him vaguely, one of Reed's miners, works the day shift, lives in the bunkhouse. The young man stops a few feet away, breathing hard. "I need to talk to you. Private. It's about Mr. Reed." "Who are you?" "Ezra Webb. I work for Mr. Reed, or I did until I quit yesterday." "Why'd you quit?" Ezra looks around nervously, making sure they're alone. "Because I saw it. What he did to Sister Grace. I saw the whole thing." The world seems to tilt slightly. "You're a witness?" "Yes, sir. I was hunting marmot up on the ridge above Devil's Canyon. Had my field glasses because I was scouting for good spots. I heard screaming, looked down, and saw Mr. Reed dragging Sister Grace into the trees. Saw her fighting. Heard her begging him to stop. Why didn't you help her?" Ezra's face crumples with shame. "Because I was scared. Mr. Reed, he's been like a father to me. My real parents died when I was 12, and he took me in, got me schooled, gave me a job. I owed him everything, and I was terrified that if I interfered, I'd lose everything, so I—" His voice breaks. "I did nothing. I walked away and let it happen. Why come forward now? Because I can't sleep. Because every time I close my eyes, I see her face, hear her screaming. And I know if I stay silent, I'm as guilty as he is. Maybe more guilty, because I could have stopped it and chose not to." Matthias studies the young man carefully. Ezra's clearly genuine, racked with guilt, barely holding himself together. But he's also Reed's employee, was raised by Reed, probably owes him money. A good lawyer will tear him apart on the stand. "You understand what this means?" Matthias asks. "If you testify, Reed will destroy you. You'll lose your auto, your home, probably any chance of working in this territory again. He has connections everywhere. He'll blacklist you." "I know, but if I don't testify, I lose myself. And I've already lost too much. Reed will say you're lying for money, or that you have a grudge against him, or that you're being manipulated. Then let him say it. I know what I saw, and I'm willing to swear to it in front of God and everybody." Matthias makes a decision. "All right, you testify, and I'll make sure you have a place to land after. I need help on my mountain, trapping, hunting, maintaining the cabin. Pays not much, but it's honest work, and Reed can't touch you up there." Ezra's eyes fill with tears. "You'd do that after I failed to help Sister Grace when it mattered? You're trying to help now. That counts for something. Maybe not as much as helping than would have, but it's something." They shake hands, and Matthias feels the pieces falling into place. Medical evidence, pattern of behavior with multiple victims, and now an eyewitness who can put Reed at the scene. It's not perfect, but it might be enough. "Don't tell anyone about this," Matthias says. "Not yet. If Reed finds out you're planning to testify, he might do something desperate. Stay quiet, keep your head down, and be ready when the judge arrives." "Yes, sir. And Mr. Flint? Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right." "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go before this is over." Ezra disappears into the night, and Matthias continues toward town. He needs to tell Grace about this development, needs to prepare her for what's coming. The hearing is less than 2 weeks away now, and everything depends on how they present their case. But for the first time since this started, Matthias feels something like hope. They have evidence, they have witnesses, they have a pattern, they have truth. Maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. August 15th dawns hot and clear, the kind of day where the sun beats down like a hammer and the air shimmers with heat. By 8 in the morning, the town hall is packed to capacity, with every person in Redemption Falls who can walk or be carried. This is the event of the year, maybe the decade, a formal hearing where a wealthy man stands accused by a nun, and the entire town gets to watch justice play out in real time. Judge Blackwell presides from behind a makeshift bench, his gray hair and stern expression giving him the gravitas of Solomon himself. He bangs his gavel, and the room falls silent. We're here to hear testimony regarding allegations by Grace Catherine Abbott against Dalton Marcus Reed. Charges are assault, battery, and forcible violation. Mr. Reed, how do you plead? Reed stands, every inch the respectable businessman in his expensive suit. Not guilty, Your Honor. These charges are completely false, fabricated by a disturbed woman and her accomplice. Miss Abbott may present her case. Grace stands, wearing a simple dark dress borrowed from Beatrice. She has no lawyer, can't afford one, so she'll represent herself. Matthias has coached her on what to say, how to say it, but ultimately this is her moment, her voice, her story. She tells it clearly, factually, with devastating precision. No emotional embellishment, just the truth laid out in simple language. She describes the day, the location, the attack, the aftermath. She describes Reed's words, his actions, his threats. She describes being found by Matthias, the medical examination by Dr. Garrett, the evidence that supports every word she's saying. The room is utterly silent. Some people are crying, some look angry, some look skeptical, but everyone is listening. Reed's lawyer, Samuel Hutchins, a slick Denver attorney with pomaded hair and expensive shoes, cross-examines her aggressively. Miss Abbott, you claim this attack occurred on June 14th, yet you weren't found until 4 days later. Where were you for those 4 days? Recovering at Mr. Flint's cabin. Alone with a man, unchaperoned, for 4 days. He saved my life. Or perhaps something else happened during those 4 days. Perhaps your injuries came from a consensual encounter that you later regretted. Perhaps you're accusing my client to cover up your own impropriety. Grace's face goes white with rage. How dare you? How dare I what? Ask uncomfortable questions? That's my job, Miss Abbott. And here's another uncomfortable question. You're a nun. You took vows of chastity, yet you spent 4 days alone with a man. Isn't it possible that you're fabricating this assault to explain away your own violation of those vows? Matthias starts to stand, fury burning in his chest, but Judge Blackwell waves him down. Mr. Hutchins, tread carefully. You're dangerously close to badgering the witness. I'm simply establishing reasonable doubt, Your Honor. My client is a pillar of this community. Miss Abbott is a woman who, by her own admission, spent 4 unchaperoned days with a man known for his violent tendencies and isolation. Which version of events is more likely? He's good, Matthias has to admit that. Hutchins is taking the facts and twisting them, creating a narrative where Grace is the liar and Reed is the victim. It's working too. Matthias can see doubt spreading through the courtroom like poison. Then Dr. Garrett takes the stand. The doctor is sober, maybe for the first time in years, and his testimony is devastating. He describes Grace's injuries in clinical detail. The pattern of bruising consistent with restraint and assault, the defensive wounds, the internal trauma. He stakes his medical reputation on his diagnosis. These injuries came from forcible rape, not consensual encounter. Hutchins tries to undermine him. Dr. Garrett, isn't it true that you're an alcoholic? I struggle with drink, yes. And isn't it true that Mr. Reed holds your mortgage? He did. The debt has been paid off. By Mr. Flint, correct? So you're financially beholden to the man who's accusing my client. Doesn't that bias your testimony? My debt was cleared, but that doesn't change what I saw. Those injuries tell a story, and that story is assault. The testimony continues. Naomi Songbird takes the stand and tells the story of her niece Ayashi, of the young girl who killed herself after Reed attacked her. Hutchins objects repeatedly, arguing that testimony about uncharged crimes is inadmissible, but Judge Blackwell allows it as evidence of pattern and character. Clara McKenna testifies about the other women who left town suddenly, the whispered stories, the quiet knowledge that something wasn't right about Dalton Reed. Then comes the moment everyone's been waiting for. Ezra Webb takes the stand. He's visibly shaking, barely able to meet Reed's eyes as he's sworn in. But once he starts talking, his voice steadies. He describes what he saw through Reed's field glasses. Reed dragging Grace into the trees, her fighting back, the assault itself witnessed from a distance, but unmistakable in its violence. "Why didn't you help her?" Judge Blackwell asks. "Because I was a coward. Mr. Reed raised me after my parents died. He was like a father to me, and I was terrified of losing his approval, his support, everything he'd given me, so I walked away. I've regretted it every moment since." Hutchins pounces. "Mr. Webb, you're testifying against the man who raised you, who gave you everything. Oui, moi, because what he did was wrong. Because Sister Grace had the courage to speak up, and the least I can do is back her up with the truth. Or perhaps you were promised something. A job, perhaps? Money? Mr. Flint offered you employment on his mountain, didn't he?" "He did, after I'd already decided to testify. I came to him, not the other way around." "How convenient. You lose your job with my client, and immediately Mr. Flint offers you a new one. That doesn't seem suspicious to you?" "What seems suspicious to me is a man using his money and power to assault women and then destroy anyone who tries to stop him." The crowd murmurs, some in support, some in doubt. The room is splitting in real time. Then Reed takes the stand in his own defense. He's smooth, practiced, playing the role of wronged innocent to perfection. He describes seeing Grace on the trail, offering help, being rebuffed. He suggests gently that she seemed troubled, possibly having doubts about her vows. He never touched her, he swears, never harmed her. The accusations are baseless, motivated by some grudge or delusion he can't fathom. Matthias watches the jury, 12 men from town, and sees belief warring with doubt on their faces. Reed is convincing. He always has been. That's how men like him get away with crimes for years. They're good at lying, good at manipulation, good at playing victim when they're actually predator. Judge Blackwell asks Reed directly, "Mr. Reed, multiple witnesses have testified to a pattern of behavior spanning years. How do you explain that?" "I can't explain lies, Your Honor. I can only tell you that I've dedicated my life to building this community, providing jobs, supporting worthy causes. These accusations are an attempt to tear down what I've built, motivated by jealousy or malice or mental instability. I'm not a perfect man, but I'm not a monster." The testimony concludes. Both sides rest. Judge Blackwell announces he'll render his decision after deliberation. The wait is excruciating. 3 hours during which the entire town holds its breath, during which Grace sits pale and shaking in Beatrice's arms, during which Matthias paces outside the town hall like a caged wolf. Finally, the judge returns. "I've reviewed all testimony and evidence. This is a difficult case. We have, he said, she said, with supporting witnesses on both sides. Physical evidence that's consistent with assault but not definitive about the perpetrator. And a pattern of accusations that's troubling but not conclusive." Matthias feels his heart sinking. "However," Blackwell continues, "I've been a judge for 30 years. I've seen hundreds of witnesses. I know truth when I hear it, and I know lies. Mr. Reed, your story has holes. Your demeanor is defensive. Your character witnesses are all people financially beholden to you. Miss Abbott, on the other hand, has everything to lose and nothing to gain by coming forward. Her testimony rings true. Mr. Webb's testimony, despite attempts to undermine it, shows genuine remorse and courage." The judge looks at Reed with cold eyes. "I find Dalton Marcus Reed guilty of assault, battery, and forcible violation of Grace Catherine Abbott. Sentence, 25 years hard labor at the Territorial Prison." The courtroom explodes. Half the room erupts in cheers, the other half in outrage. Reed lunges toward Grace, screaming threats, but Sheriff Cooper and 2 deputies restrain him. Matthias moves to shield Grace as the chaos swirls around them. Reed's face is purple with rage. "This isn't over. I'll appeal. I have lawyers. I have money. You can't do this to me." "I just did," Judge Blackwell says calmly. "Sheriff, take him into custody." As Reed is dragged away, still screaming threats and promises of revenge, Grace collapses against Matthias. She's crying, shaking, But there's something else in her expression too. Relief, victory, the knowledge that she was believed, that justice was served, that the monster who hurt her will pay for his crimes. It's over, she whispers. It's over, Matthias confirms. But he knows it's not really over. Not yet. Reed's brother Jacob is standing in the corner, watching with an unreadable expression. Reed's men are angry, muttering among themselves. The town is divided. Half support the verdict, half think it's a miscarriage of justice. The battle is won, but the war isn't finished. 18 months later, winter 1880, snow falls soft and steady on Elk Mountain, covering the landscape in white perfection. Inside the expanded cabin, Grace stands at the stove making coffee while Matthias works at the table, carving a new set of wooden animals for the school that they built together, the one that teaches 30 children now, mixing settler kids with Ute children, giving everyone a chance at education regardless of race or wealth. Ezra is outside chopping wood, his movements efficient and practiced. He's been living on the mountain for over a year now, learning the ways of wilderness survival, becoming the younger brother Matthias never had. The guilt over his failure to help Grace still haunts him, but he's channeling it into purpose, into becoming the kind of man who helps instead of hiding. Grace brings Matthias coffee and sits beside him. She's not wearing a habit anymore, hasn't for months. She left the convent last spring, not because she lost her faith, but because she realized her calling had changed. She can serve God and help people without walls and vows. She can teach, can heal, can build something good from the ashes of trauma. What are you thinking, she asked Vipain. Thinking about how different life is now from 2 years ago. Thinking about how one decision, one choice to not walk away changed everything. Do you regret it, getting involved? Never, you? Never, although there are still hard days. Tell me. Grace is quiet for a moment. I still have nightmares sometimes. Still flinch when men move too quickly. Still can't go back to Devil's Canyon, probably never will. The trauma doesn't just disappear because justice was served. I know. But I'm also stronger than I was. I survived something that should have destroyed me. I spoke up when staying silent would have been easier. I helped bring down a monster. That's something. Matthias reaches over and takes her hand. The gesture is still new, still careful, but it's real. Their relationship has developed slowly over the past 18 months, building from trust to friendship to something deeper. They haven't married yet, haven't even discussed it explicitly, but there's an understanding between them, a partnership, a future being built one day at a time. Grace? Yes? I want to ask you something. I've been thinking about it for months, but I wanted to wait until you were ready, until we were both ready. She turns to look at him, and there's anticipation in her eyes. Ask, will you marry me, not because you need protecting or because I'm trying to save you, but because we built something good together, because I love who you are, the strength and courage and stubbornness that makes you you, because I want to keep building with you, whatever that looks like. Grace smiles, and it's the first truly unguarded smile he's seen from her since the day they met. Yes, I'll marry you on one condition. What's that? We do it here, on the mountain, by the creek where you first found me. I want to reclaim that place, make it about beginning instead of ending. I can't think of anything better. They marry in the spring of 1880, with Judge Blackwell officiating and the whole mountain community in attendance. Beatrice is there, and Clara, and Naomi, and Ezra, and Dr. Garrett, who's been sober for 2 years now, and working to rebuild his practice. Even some of Reed's former employees attend, men who've seen the error of following a corrupt employer and are trying to make amends. Reed himself is in prison, serving his sentence at hard labor. He'll be there for another 23 years, and Matthias suspects he won't survive that long. Men like Reed don't do well in prison, especially when their crimes involve women. Justice has a way of working itself out, even behind bars. Jacob Reed runs the company now, and he's doing it differently. Fair wages, safe conditions, no tolerance for the corruption and abuse that defined his brother's reign. It's a form of atonement, maybe, or just being the brother he should have been all along. The ceremony is simple. Matthias wears his cleanest shirt and his beard freshly trimmed. Grace wears a blue dress, not white, because she's not pretending this is an innocent beginning. They're both scarred, both broken in ways that will never fully heal. But broken things can be repaired, and sometimes the repair makes them stronger than they were before. They exchange vows they wrote themselves, promises to stand beside each other, to build together, to face whatever comes with courage and honesty. Promises to honor each other's scars while working toward healing. Promises to create something good from the ashes of trauma. When Judge Blackwell pronounces them married, the assembled crowd cheers. Ezra plays fiddle, badly but enthusiastically. Someone produces a jug of corn whiskey. Children run through the snow, laughing. It's joyful and imperfect and real. That night, lying beside his new wife in the cabin they've expanded together, Matthias thinks about legacy, about the life he's building that will outlast him, the school that will teach generations, the example of standing up to power that will inspire others, the message that one person's courage can change everything. "Tell me about your son," Grace says softly. "Your first win, Thomas." Matthias has talked about Clara before, but rarely about Thomas. The pain is still too sharp. But tonight, with his new wife beside him and a future stretching ahead, he finds he can speak. "He loved animals, used to follow me around asking 1,000 questions about why deer do this or how birds do that. He would have been 16 now, would have loved this mountain, loved the school we're building. I think about him every day. We could name our first son Thomas," Grace says, "if we have children to honor him." Matthias feels something crack open in his chest, something frozen for 8 years starting to thaw. "You'd do that?" "Of course, he's part of your story, part of what made you the man who saved me. I want to honor that." They conceived their first child that spring, a boy born healthy and strong in the winter of 1881. They name him Thomas Jacob Flint, honoring both the son Matthias lost and the young man who found his courage in time to make a difference. 3 years later, a daughter, Lily Clara, named for Grace's sister Lily and Matthias's first wife Clara. She has her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn determination. The mountain school flourishes. By 1885, they're teaching 40 students, mixing academic subjects with practical skills. Reading and arithmetic alongside tracking and wilderness survival. History and science alongside carpentry and herbalism. They're creating a new generation of children who know how to think and how to survive, who understand both books and nature. Ezra marries Running Deer's niece, a Ute woman named Talassi, who teaches the children traditional medicine and storytelling. They build a cabin 2 valleys over and have 3 children of their own. Ezra still works Matthias's trap lines every winter, still carries the guilt of what he didn't do that day in Devil's Canyon. But he's channeling it into being the kind of man who acts when action is needed. Dr. Garrett stays sober, rebuilt his practice, became the town's most respected physician. He uses his second chance to do good, treating everyone regardless of ability to pay, making house calls at all hours, being the doctor he always should have been. Clara McKenna married a merchant and opened a restaurant alongside her saloon, creating a business empire built on fairness and hard work. She becomes the unofficial mayor of Redemption Falls, the person everyone turns to when disputes need settling or decisions need making. Father Whitmore stood before his congregation 8 months after the trial and confessed his cowardice. He'd let fear of losing Reed's donations silence him when he should have spoken. The apology didn't erase his failure, but it was a start. He's been a different priest since, one who stands with the powerless even when it costs him. The town itself changes. The trial and verdict sent a message. Wealth doesn't protect you from consequences, and women's voices matter. More women start businesses, start speaking up, start demanding to be treated as full human beings rather than property or decoration. It's not a revolution, but it's evolution, slow and steady progress towards something better. 1899, 21 years later. Old Matthias finishes his story as the fire burns low and the snow continues to fall outside. Thomas, 18 now and ready for law school, sits stunned by the tale he's heard. Lily, 15 and already teaching at the mountain school, has tears on her cheeks. "That's how you met Mom?" Thomas asks. She was, "Dad, I never knew." "Your mother wanted to tell you herself when you were old enough to understand. She wanted you to know her as she is now, not as she was then, strong and whole, not broken." "Is she really okay after everything?" She's better. Has hard days still, times when the memories come back sharp. But she built a life worth living. Built it with her own two hands and fierce determination. That's real strength, son. Not pretending trauma doesn't exist, but living fully despite it. Lily speaks up. Papa, you saved her. No, I found her. She saved herself. I just stood beside her while she did it. The door opens and Grace enters from the kitchen, 56 years old now, with silver threading through her auburn hair. She's aged beautifully, laugh lines around her eyes, hands still strong from years of work. She looks at her family, gathered around the fire, and smiles. Did he tell you everything, including the embarrassing parts where he was terrified and didn't know what to do? Mom, Thomas protests, but he's grinning. Grace sits beside Matthias, taking his weathered hand in hers. Your father likes to make himself sound heroic, but the truth is simpler. He was a good man who did what good men do. He helped someone who needed help. The rest just followed from that. I'm going to be a lawyer, Thomas says firmly, going to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Like you did, Dad, like you did, Mom. And I'm going to keep teaching, Lily adds. Make sure every child on this mountain knows reading and writing and how to think for themselves. That's power too. Education, knowledge. Matthias and Grace exchange a look, and in it is everything. Pride in their children, satisfaction in the life they built, acknowledgement of the scars they both still carry, and determination that those scars will mean something. That's legacy, Matthias says quietly. Not wealth or property or fame. Legacy is raising children who want to make the world better. Legacy is building institutions that outlast you. Legacy is standing up when standing up costs everything, because you know someone has to. Grace squeezes his hand. And legacy is loving someone enough to let them be broken for a while, to give them space to heal, and to build something new together when they're ready. Outside, the snow falls on the mountain school, on the 3 buildings that house 40 students, on the gardens that feed them, on the paths worn by 2 decades of children learning to read and think and grow. Falls on the small cemetery where Clara and a few others are buried, lives well lived and now peacefully ended. Falls on the valley below, on Redemption Falls where justice sometimes prevails and good sometimes triumphs. Falls on everything Matthias and Grace built from ashes and trauma and sheer stubborn determination to create something good. The fire burns low. The family sits together, and in the morning they'll wake and start again, building and teaching and living, creating a future worth the price they paid for it. Because that's what survivors do. They survive. They rebuild. They create legacies that echo through generations. And sometimes, if they're very lucky and very brave, they find that the worst day of their life becomes the doorway to something beautiful. Not despite the trauma, but growing around it, incorporating it, transforming it into strength and purpose and meaning. Matthias Cordell Flint closes his eyes and feels Clara's ghost finally rest. He did it. He didn't fail this time. He stood when it mattered, fought when fighting was needed, and built something that will outlast him. That's duty. That's honor. That's love. That's enough. The children eventually drift off to bed, leaving Matthias and Grace alone by the dying fire. Outside, the wind howls, but inside is warm, quiet, safe. Grace rests her head on his shoulder, the gesture as natural now as breathing after 21 years together. Do you think we did right, telling them everything? They're old enough to know where they came from, what it costs to build this life. Thomas wants to be a lawyer now, fight for people who can't fight for themselves. He gets that from you, the fighting spirit. And from you, the refusal to look away from evil. Matthias takes her hand, the skin weathered and marked by decades of mountain living, but still warm, still strong. We built something good, Grace. Out of the worst day of our lives, we built something that matters. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd walked away that day? If you'd decided Devil's Canyon wasn't your problem? Every day. And every day, I'm grateful I didn't. She turns to look at him, green eyes still bright despite the silver in her hair. I love you, Matthias Cordell Flint, for finding me, for standing with me, for building this with me. I love you too, Grace. Always have from the moment you trusted me enough to take that coat. Always will until my last breath and beyond. They sit in comfortable silence. Two old warriors resting after a long campaign. The fire burns down to embers. The snow falls outside. And inside the mountain cabin, surrounded by the legacy they built from trauma and determination. Matthias and Grace hold each other and know they fought well, loved well, and left the world better than they found it.